So let me do the intros while we wait. My name is Gian. I'm actually fairly new to the world of Redis. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Good. Take this. I do a lot of hand movements, so I'm sure I'm going to lose sound at some point. But it's great to see this crowd. It's amazing. I'll start with a quick intro. I'm a database geek. I've spent a lot of time in this world of databases. So this is my ritual. I kind of do try to see how my products do in the community after a while. So I'll start with the databases that I worked on. I'd like to see how many of you remember any of these databases. But the first thing I did, I think back 20 years ago, I met a guy called Michael Stonebreaker. And how many people know Michael? A few. Okay, good. And the stories he told it just convinced me that this is the path that I want to take. So he was working on a database called Illustra. Anybody remember Illustra? No? Okay. It was a great database. Then Informix purchased Illustra. How many people remember Informix? Good, a couple of people. And then I spent a couple of years at Informix and then switched to Microsoft SQL Server. How many people use SQL? Good. I spent quite a few years working on SQL Server. And then cloud started, and that got me very excited. I worked on a database called SQL Azure. Good, a few people. And then eventually got to a NoSQL database called Couchbase. How many people use Couchbase? All right, a few. But then the best was yet to come, and it's Redis. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story as to why I think that. But I love the database world. I've kind of spent a lot of time looking at these things, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I won't take too much, just to tell you why I think Redis is super cool. I'll also talk about the enterprise platform we're building. So Shai talked a little bit about the cloud side of the service. I'm going to talk about all the products that we're building and the platform that is the underpinning of all the things that we do. I just want to give you, just like Salvatore did, a little bit of a view into what we're building next in 2017. All right, so why Redis? And how many people are new to Redis? Brand new. Okay, there's a sizable crowd. Good. So if I ask people who've used this technology for a while, I'll get a lot of answers. I'm sure, Shai mentioned a few. It's elastic, it's super fast, low latency. Those are all the great reasons, but there's something very unique in the way Redis approaches the data and the modeling problem. And I think that is what makes Redis super unique. So when it comes to Redis, the way you express your problem space into the database is very different compared to every other database that you use. This is really extremely unique. The reason, I think I'll try to explain it just by putting aside the data modeling problem for a second and just talk about architecture. So if you look at an outline of Tel Aviv, right, you see a whole bunch of different buildings. You don't see a single type of building. You've got a space like this where it's great to interact and present. We've got a hospital where we take care of our sick. We've got libraries to exchange information. But every one of these architectures, we don't come up with a single type of building that will kind of solve every type of problem. We build structures to allow us to maximize and optimize the interaction we want to have as people, right? And every building serves that purpose. So when you're modeling your problem, you'll have databases out there. I've studied this for a long time, that give you tables to model every problem that you have in the world. Now, rows and columns, they're great. You can solve a lot of problems with these things. But we know where they actually fall short, right? There's a lot of cases where semi-structured data can actually struggle with this. Or there are other databases that will give you documents. Documents are great. JSON is fantastic, up to a point. If you try to model anything effectively, or if you're trying to model your data that has many-to-many relationships, good luck. You're going to hit a wall. I've worked on a few of these databases. I can tell you it's not that easy to model your data in JSON. What Redis does instead is it actually gives you a set of structures that are much like the buildings that you see around the city, that natively allow you to express the type of problem that you want to solve. Now, if you want a table, there's a table-like structure. If you want something that is semi-structured, there are JSON-like structures, or there's JSON inside the database that you can use. But there's a whole bunch of other structures that really allow you to natively express what your problem is. So you can optimize the type of interaction you want to have with your data directly in the structure that allows to do it. And you can have all of those things all at once in a single database. And this, fundamentally, to me, is why Redis is the coolest database. It allows me to express my problem and model it in a way where I can take half of my data and make it a table or a list or a sorted set or a key value, and I can choose what is best to represent that problem. Now, not only does it do that, it actually doesn't only constrain you to a single way of interacting with your data. So it's not a get and set. You can do that, of course. But, or a row-based operation, but you get verbs for each one of these data types to be able to interact with it the way you want to exchange that data. So Shai's example of constructing his problem of deep conversations, well, that's a great example of how you could actually use one of those data types and really express your problem deeply inside the engine. Now, Salvatore also talked about modules, and I think that's the next revolution here. And the reason I think that is I've worked on a number of different products, but many of the other databases which try to extend their database, I've worked on XML implementation in SQL. I don't know if anybody used XML in relational databases. But the way we've implemented that was to shred XML into rows and columns, because that's what the database understands, and that's the way you actually have to express it. Now, the way the modules express the data, the extension that you have, is not by abstracting it to something else that Redis understands. You actually get a chance to embed directly into the kernel of the product exactly the experience that you want and exactly the exchange and optimization and verbiage you want. And it's at the speed of memory. So all of that combined makes this an amazing platform. All right, so with that story, let me spend a little bit of time explaining what we build on top of Redis and with Redis. We're obviously the company behind the open source product. Working with Salvatore is super exciting for me. We're also building a Redis enterprise platform. This is the platform that's the underpinning for all the products that we built. So Shai talked about the Redis Cloud Service. We also have Redis Pack, which is the on-premise version. If you want to take it and manage it yourself, and you want to do the kind of deployment in a private data center that you have, you can actually do that too. We've been founded in 2011. I'm a fairly new recruit, but I'm in HQ in Mountain View. So that's where some of the team is, and majority of development is done out here. These are the products. Redis Cloud on this side is the set of services. You can actually get Redis Cloud as a private offering as well on your own compute if you want, or Redis Pack, where you actually take it and you manage it yourself, or we can help you manage it through a managed service there as well in your private owned data center. Now, it is amazing. I've actually worked on Azure in its very early days. It was an incubation. It was before it was unveiled in, I think it was 2010. And these are extremely impressive numbers, I can tell you, from the point of public cloud services out there. Over 200,000 databases over the last 3 years, 450 databases every day getting created on the service, and thousands of node failures, or over 1,000 node failures that we've survived without losing any data. So amazing service, an amazing team. I'll acknowledge that. The man right there and the team that he manages does a fantastic job. putting up a highly available service. It's available, and we've got customers around the world that are growing fast. Redis Pack is fairly new. There's only about 200 enterprises on that product, but over 6,800 enterprises paying customers on top of Redis Cloud. And I think that number is already outdated, but over 60,000 accounts on the service today. Logo wall, I won't walk through every one of them, but we're pretty much in every vertical, every problem space, helping people solve these problems. So you should feel confident when you're switching to this product. I'll take a second just to introduce you to what we add and we expand on top of the Redis open source capability. So what you see in the red blocks at the bottom, that's the open source Redis. What we add on top of it is essentially a governor and orchestrator and a proxy that allows you to do effective data access with the service. And essentially a set of components that allow you to have cluster failover and orchestration and management, all the things that you would expect. The proxy architecture allows you to have essentially a binary compatible exchange. So you can take your Redis application, just change your connection string, point to us, and you'll be able to get your environment working. And the Redis cluster essentially is a symmetric set of nodes that we put together. So it makes the scalability model much easier. We can actually just continue to scale out your workload just by adding nodes. So this was the hard part. I had to pick and choose, and I'll spend a few minutes on 3 things that we're working on for next year that I think are super exciting. So first one that I want to talk about is exactly in line with the problem that Shai was talking about, which is cost. So one of the things that we actually realized, obviously, RAM is expensive, and Flash is not as expensive. People love the low latency access, but there needs to be a way for people to get a lot of this information, still stay online at low latency access, but not pay as much. So what we've done is the Redis on Flash technology. There's a next version of this technology that's coming up. We actually have something available today. But essentially what we do is give you an optimization where we can essentially evict part of your data onto a flash drive, extend your RAM. So instead of having essentially a contiguous address space that is just DRAM, we can actually take a chunk of that and make that be on flash. Now the reason this is very effective is if you think about the cost, it's obvious, right? There's huge amount of savings, and depending on how much RAM versus flash you get, you can actually save a lot of money. But it's also very effective compared to some of the disk-based subsystems disk-based databases that you actually work with. So if you think about MongoDB or Cassandra or Oracle or SQL Server, they actually keep all of their data on disk. Right? That's actually a reasonable approach. They have a buffer cache where they actually take a chunk of the data that you access and put it up into memory. But the approach we take is much different compared to that, and we can be. You can extend your RAM. Okay. But, let's see if they actually do pretty much similar stuff. But the way it's not magic. It's pretty much laws of physics. The reason we can be faster by extending RAM versus storing data on disk for durability is because you can essentially keep writing to the hot portion of your workload without having to go to disk at all. So all your disk IOPS can be saved to be able to essentially do other tasks. If you have 10% of your workload that's really hot, you keep writing to it and reading from it. There's no reason to do disk I/O. All the disk I/O is preserved for things that are cache misses. And we can go to the flash and bring that into memory and have you access it. Now, when it comes to write performance, we use RuxDB behind the scenes, but we also have to. We also can avoid a couple of things like the write-ahead log or the redo logs that you have to maintain if you're writing durably to disk versus if you're doing it as a RAM extension. So our writes are a little cheaper than regular databases, disk-based subsystem. So this just ultimately makes this much faster compared to a disk-based database to access. Now, Another technology that we're working on is geodistribution of Redis. And we want to take an approach with CRDTs. How many people know what CRDTs stand for? Okay, only a few people. CRDT is a conflict-free replication data type. They're essentially mathematically proven to reconcile your active rights across geographies without you having to interfere. So it's a smart conflict resolution mechanism that essentially can merge your data. Now today we have a piece of technology called replica-of that will let you span the world. So if you want a CDN-like approach where you want to push your data to different geographies, well, you have that today. You can do that pretty easily, and it's called replica-of in our database. But the next set of technology that we're bringing on board will allow you to have active rights in all of these geographies, and use CRDTs to essentially smartly merge those conflicting rights together without having a reconciliation for the entire set of databases that are involved in the operation. So CRDTs are very exciting. It's pretty new technology, but I encourage every one of you to take a look at that. I want to go through the list of problems that you can solve with it. But it's an exciting technology, and if you're a last right wins kind of person, you will find that this is much richer when it comes to especially the data types that you actually end up using with Redis. Now, I'm going to plug Yossi's talk in here. If you guys are curious about this technology, I encourage you to listen very carefully to this talk. It will actually go into detail. Now, last thing I'll talk about is modules, and all I want to say is I think it's a phenomenal technology. I think it's this native extensibility that we have. It just makes Redis extremely unique. There's quite a few out there. I don't know if you had a chance to check them out, but as I said, this is not an abstraction to something that Redis internally understands. It's a native way to express what you want to see inside the database. And that makes it exciting because we, as Redis Labs, are developing quite a few of these. But there's the community of people who are putting them out there as well. There's quite a few talks that will go into detail, so I won't ruin the surprise here or steal the thunder. But these are a couple of the things that we're working on, and obviously all the things that Salvatore talked about for Redis 4. So it's a very exciting year. I'm glad to see all of you come in and be excited about the technology. And thank you very much. Thanks.